Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Today I'm joined by ESPN's David Newton as we discuss the Carolina Panthers. Yes, that means Cam Newton. David also knows this coaching staff very well, so I was curious to get his thoughts on Ron Rivera and Marty Hurney. I've talked to him about this before, but I always think it's good to go back and hear what somebody who covered him for a long time thinks. Mostly we talked about the Panthers, their defense, Cam Newton, and what Washington will face this weekend. You can follow David on Twitter at DNewtonESPN, and you can read both our work on ESPN.com. I'll have a story later this week on Ron Rivera's return to Carolina, as you might imagine. What are the chances he can come away with a win? And Newton will have one on Cam Newton. No relation there, folks, but he will have one on Cam, of course. Before I play my conversation with David, a couple things. After rewatching the game and watching the last few weeks, I love what they're doing with Landon Collins. There's a reason they won't call him a linebacker. He's not one. He's a smart, versatile player who can line up at safety or in a linebacker role. That's what he's been doing. To label him is incorrect. There were times Sunday where he was aligned in a deep half only to drop to the middle, almost in a Tampa 2 look with Cam Curl and Bobby McCain rotating to the deep halves. Another time, Collins would buzz to the flat to cover. This 3 safety look is an effective one for Washington, and I wonder why they did not go to it much earlier this year. This is what Collins does best. He's not a traditional safety, but that's almost what they were having him be early on this season. And I've wondered this before, but it does seem like they need to do a better job of finding out about their players in training camp. Having a joint practice would help. They couldn't have one in 2020 because of COVID, and I know they were reluctant to schedule one this past summer for the same reason. But when you're not playing your starters a lot in the preseason, you need to find out about them somehow. Those joint practices help provide invaluable information. Otherwise, you can be fooled by what you're seeing. And I've talked to guys about this before. They might think their team is pretty good coming out of camp. Then you start playing other teams and you realize really weren't, because maybe the offense you're facing as a defensive player isn't that good. So it builds a false level of security about what you need to do to then succeed. That's why it's important to face other teams and get more information about your players. And I think the last 2 years, it's taken about the first 4 games or so before they start to see certain things and then make some moves. Anyway, Collins has been good. I know the assumption was Washington would cut him after the season, considering his $16+ million cap hit next year. I would not cut him. Maybe you can restructure, considering he's still young and can be a part of their future for a few years in this role. Keep this in mind. Jamal Adams, I think in 2 years, his cap hit's like $23 million. Now, I don't know if Seattle would keep him at that point, but the point is that's where it's going. Tyrann Mathieu, his hit this year, it's over $19 million. I'm not saying Collins is right there with them and that should be paid whatever. But when he's playing this well, he's pretty damn good. And if you cut him, the defense takes a hit, and now you have to replace what he does. They can absorb this cap hit. There are other ways you can either free up money. I think the key is what they do at quarterback, because if you go out and get a veteran, you have to pay a lot. If you have to do something like that, it makes it harder to not only afford that quarterback, but also Landon Collins, and then also perhaps pay Daron Payne down the road. And then, of course, the other ones. But, that also is for a couple years from now. They are in good cap shape for next year, even with that $16 million on the books. But again, I'm finding a way to keep him at this point. He's been playing well, not just for the last couple games, but for several games. Ever since they started putting him down more in the box, he's been a lot more consistent, and he is a smart player. I love this 3 safety look because it provides them with a lot of versatility. And I'm going to give Cam Curl a lot of credit there too, because they asked him to do some of the same stuff, not completely, because Collins I think is definitely used differently, but there are definitely times where you can use Curl in certain roles because of his versatility and his smarts. Anyway, I also thought they did a good job for the most part at limiting Tampa's yards after the catch outside of a couple plays. That was a big deal. They did that by the way they played the zone, keeping things in front of them. They took the middle away big time, but they also, as coaches like to say, they connected to their guys. And we haven't always seen that, but we did on Sunday, and that mattered. I do believe they can be okay without Chase Young and Montez Sweat in some aspects. Casey Tuhill, first of all, those guys are different. We're going to put them in a different category. So Young and Sweat, we know that. But Casey Tuhill is a good athlete. Both he and James Smith-Williams dropped a couple times into coverage, taking away the middle of the field. Young did that too on one occasion at least before he was hurt Sunday. Make no mistake, they're far better with Young and Sweat, but as a coach, you have to consider how a guy can help you. What does he do well? Smith-Williams, I've been around some coaches who look at what guys can't do, and to me that tells you you're not a good coach. And one of the best defensive coaches I was around was Greg Williams, and his thing was always find out what a guy can do well. Some subsequent defensive coordinators were not the same. We're not at the same level. Anyway, I think this staff will do that, and I think we're starting to see it. Smith-Williams is strong. He's good against the run. Tuhill is not a bad pass rusher, not dynamic, but I think he's consistent. So it allows those around you to know how to play off you and for coaches to know what to expect. You're absolutely going to lose depth in a huge way, and you don't have two big athletic ends who can handle a quarterback like a Cam Newton. That too matters. But I don't think it's a lost cause because the tackles are still very good, and I do think that these guys can help. I'm also curious to see what Shaka Toney does. He's very quick off the ball, very quick. But he's also smaller, and I saw him with a couple good rushes, but I also saw him get bumped off his path a little bit easier because he's not a big guy. So they have some things you can work with. The depth and how will it hold up over time? I don't know, but I don't think that this defense has to suffer dramatically because of that. One more note on Sunday's win. They played with confidence, something we haven't always seen. Why they picked Sunday to play that way against a really good team, I don't know. Maybe it was playing from ahead and seeing the defense make plays early. 3 and out on the first series, huge. But I also think when you play that physical on offense, it sets a tone. I know some of the old linemen have been wanting to run the ball more. No newsflash there. They could stay committed to it, which I think they've been committed to it for a couple previous games. They just had to because they fall behind, they have to end up throwing more. I think a few things went in their favor as well. Taylor Heineke was inaccurate in the red zone against Denver. He was accurate under duress against Tampa. That last drive, there were a couple throws, a throw to Gibson and throw to Heineke. There are guys coming at Heineke in his face, or the throw to McLaurin, I should say. So, and he made perfect throws on those. That wasn't happening against Denver. The last 3 games, Washington's moved the ball well. Sunday, they converted in the red zone, and that was the difference. If they'd done so against Denver, they'd be on a 2-game winning streak. The key here is consistency and building on that success. And by the way, in Denver, also 2 blocked field goals. Joey Sly was huge on Sunday. I think that's a good lift for them as well. And I wanted to make sure I said something about him because I forgot to say something about him after the game Sunday. Anyway, that's it from me. After this break, I'll be back with ESPN's David Newton. What has Cam Newton done for the Panthers, and why is their defense so good?
The Timberwolves select Kevin Garnet from Farragut Academy.
A high school kid? No chance.
You saw the future of what basketball was about to become.
He does whatever it takes to win a basketball game. All I know is all out. Abdul, what's up? I want to be challenged to the end.
Anything's possible! Kevin Garnett, Anything is Possible. Now streaming on Showtime.
This episode is brought to you by VMware. What more could you do if you unleashed the power of all clouds? Learn how VMware cross-cloud services can help your business navigate change faster. Visit vmware.com/welcome.
Welcome back. Now here's my conversation with ESPN's David Newton. David, a week ago, maybe 8 days ago, I'm thinking that, okay, this matchup, Ron Rivera going back, but what do the Panthers have? And Washington struggling. And all of a sudden, this matchup is a little more interesting. What kind of life has Cam Newton breathed into the Panthers?
Well, the one thing about Cam, whether he's good Cam on the field or bad Cam, he always brings energy, and he always keeps things interesting. And right now, everybody's on a high because, it was good Cam on Sunday. Even though he only played 8 plays, 2 touchdowns on his first 2 times he touched the ball. You couldn't write a script for Hollywood any better than that. So that part of it worked out well. There are going to be some bumps in the road along the way. It's not going to be that way all the time. But right now, he energized this franchise. The defense already was playing at a high level. When they had energy, and defenses that are playing well tend to do that. But this offense under Sam Darnold just almost seemed lifeless at times. Even when McCaffrey's out there, but McCaffrey's not he's a very high energy on the field as far as what he does. He's not in terms of just that energy he brings to his teammates as far as the leadership thing. And Cam brings that. So you saw it after his first touchdown. He ripped off his helmet and ran over to the sideline screaming, I'm back. Got a 15-yard penalty, which Matt Rule asked him not to get again, please. And he said, please, to Cam. And Cam said, I got it. Say less. But, yeah, it's been crazy. I thought the best example of how Cam, what he brings to this community and to the team, Matt said he went to a father-daughter dance, daddy-daughter, last Friday night. And he said a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old little girl came up to him and said, are you the coach of the Panthers? And he said, yeah. He said, is Cam really back? So, I mean, wow. I mean, that kind of just shows the whole magnitude.
Absolutely. And, you covered, obviously, his tenure before and what the impact he had. It must be hard I think it'd be hard to ask, like, how different he is as a player because you haven't seen enough of him, but you would have maybe seen snippets from last year or whatever. So at the end of his tenure, what did it look like? And what's the optimism that he can get back to a certain point?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't good the end of his tenure at Carolina. He lost his last 8 starts. His shoulder was giving him problems. His foot was an issue. He just wasn't the same player. And that made it hard for him to continue the energy that he would bring back because he just couldn't play at the level he was accustomed to. And that's why Matt Rule moved on from him. And he would do the same thing again if the circumstances were the same because there were just too many question marks around him. And then he goes to New England where he was having some success before the COVID. And then things just kind of fell apart after that. But they feel like he's completely healthy now, that he can do a lot of the things. He's not going to be complete Superman Cam, or he's going to, make the amazing runs and things that you saw in the past. But as you saw on Sunday, when you get him down there in the red zone, he's enough of a threat where that opens things up for him, Christian McCaffrey, and everybody else, just because you have to pay attention to that quarterback as a dual threat guy. And they didn't, even though Sam Darnold, I think, scored 5 touchdowns rushing in the first 3 games, I don't think a lot of people out there are worried about Sam Darnold running the ball. So he just brings everything kind of back. I think he can be somewhere in between what we saw in, maybe 2017 and those first 8 games, because he was playing really at a level then better than he was at his MVP year. I mean, they were 6-2, and his completion percentage was at all-time high. And he was just playing really well under North Turner, which you guys are very familiar with down in Washington. So I don't think he can get back quite to that level, but somewhere in between that and what he was before, I think would be good enough to help this team right now because he's got plenty of weapons. And this defense, number 2 in the NFL, is playing really well.
And I'm going to get to that in a minute with Cam. And with obviously Washington had a chance to sign him on a couple different occasions and chose not to. And I don't believe it was ever all that serious of a consideration. And I think this group obviously knows him very well. And I think one of the things they wondered about is he's got an outsized personality. Would it be too much for certain other players? And so, first of all, do you think that will impact Cam facing this group on Sunday? Because again, he knows they passed on him and he knows that they know him well. And what about that personality? Is it, and I don't want to say it's a bad thing. I just think that he commands a lot of attention. And if you want him as a backup, maybe that would threaten a starter, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I asked Matt Rule that on Monday, and I said, you preached after the game, it's not about one player, it's about the team. And I understand that. I said, but with Cam, it often becomes about Cam, whether he's making it about Cam or not, because everybody else kind of gravitates to him and what he does and just the emotion he brings on, like he did on the sideline after that first touchdown. And Matt said, I want full Cam. I don't want Cam light. I can handle that because as long as Cam's focus is on football, which it is, he said, we've got a good thing there. And he said, it's the same. I want Christian McCaffrey to be full Christian McCaffrey. I think he's going to let him play. He's going to let him show his personality and be who he is and not try to tone that back, which is a good thing because I don't think you can tone Cam back.
Right.
And yeah, I think for some teams that's scary. That's why I didn't think that the Panthers wanted him the first time around with Matt Rule. So I was it was very interesting to listen to Matt talk about that and what he thinks he can do with that. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. And plus, Cam's been humbled by what's happened the last 2 or 3 years. So while he knows, he can't be the player he was maybe his MVP season, he wants to prove that he can still be a solid starter in the NFL because he's playing for not this year, he's playing for a contract next year. And if he plays well enough down the stretch this year, maybe gets the Panthers in the playoffs, they'll sign him back. He'll be their quarterback going into next year, and Sam Darnold will be the highest paid backup in NFL history, maybe.
I mean, Cam's only 32.
Yeah, but we say that like it's young.
And he's been beaten up more than others.
But he has been beaten up.
Yes.
I think I wrote it 1,000 times. He's been hit more than any quarterback in the league since he came into the league. And I think Tom Brady playing at, what is he now, 105? I mean, I think the fact that Tom Brady is playing at the level he is such an older age. It's kind of got people not thinking about 32 being old, but 32 in the past was considered getting up toward the end of a career for a quarterback. And now we've got, Aaron Rodgers out there, 38-ish, and a lot of guys that are playing way past what you would consider their prime. So, and again, Cam's different just because of what he likes to do, and that's run the ball and be a threat as a thrower. So if he can just continue to show that he's a little bit of a threat as a runner, that's especially with this offensive line that's I think it's gone through 7 different combinations because of injuries, and they're down now to their backup center, their backup left guard, their backup left tackle, or maybe backup left tackle, and backup right guard. The only person that's where they've been all year is Taylor Moton at the right tackle spot. So that'll help that group because they'll focus more on the run, and then when teams are having to focus on Cam and Christian, that'll make it easier on them.
Yeah. What do you think the return of Rivera means this week to not just, first of all, I don't know how many players are still there that were there. I mean, it's not just Ron. It's like half of Carolina or Charlotte will be coming back because of this with how many people from Carolina are on the staff. But what do you think that return means to the city, but also to the team? Because I don't even know how many people are still there from when he coached them.
There are only about 14 players on the roster, and not many really. And the rest of the staff is completely gone. I mean, you got their special teams coach or coordinator Chase Blackburn. He played for him and coached under him, but for the most part, there's not many people left. And I think it would have been a bigger deal had it not been for what's going on with Cam. Right. I think Cam and his personality and what he did, beating Arizona, I think that's kind of just taken over where Ron's return is almost secondary. I'm not saying it's not important, but this team is, and Matt Rule, he doesn't really care. I mean, he likes Ron Rivera. He doesn't know much about him, but, he welcomes him back, but he just wants to win a game. They've lost 3 straight at home. So they're not focused on Ron Rivera other than the fact what's Ron Rivera going to do to try to stop Cam Newton and their offense and whatever they want to do. So, yeah, I think it'll be special for Ron to be back, his family to be back, because there are a lot of people in the community that do love him. I mean, he was, the guy that got him to the Super Bowl. The only thing he really didn't do was lead them to consecutive winning seasons. And as far as Ron's concerned, he did, because he still counts the 7-8-1 trip to the playoffs as a back-to-back. He kind of emphasized that on his departures. So I thought Ron was a great coach. He did a lot of great things. Could he have still won had he stayed here? Probably so. But was it time to move on with David Tepper, new ownership? Probably so. But yeah, I think there'll be a lot of people in the stands that'll be pulling for Ron, but I think there'll be more people pulling for Cam Newton right now in the Panthers.
I'm sure there are, because ultimately their allegiance is going to be to the Panthers. Do you think? I mean, obviously they've been struggling this year, 3-6. You've seen what Rivera has done in previous years, in the second half of years, and all that. Do you think that he's going to get it done here? And plus, not just him, but the Marty Herneys of the world and all that. Do you think that group can get it done here?
Yeah, whether they can do it this year or not, I don't know. I mean, it'd be tough to really get it from where they are right now into the playoffs. They lost one of their best defensive players for at least this. Right. I don't know how many games they'll be out. So that'll make it tough on them. I think the fact that they struggled defensively early in the year has kind of put them in a hole that it's going to be tough to dig out of. But I've seen him do it. I mean, they've gone on runs in the past, and he's been really good in November and December. That's been one of his strengths, is keeping a team focused and making them believe that they can win and make a run and be relevant. That's one of his key phrase words. Was always around here, be relevant, and he got the Panthers relevant again. So I think he can succeed. I think he's a really good coach. He'll build with really good people around him. I mean, what he's gotten Taylor Heineke as his quarterback, he probably needs to get another level of quarterback up there. Taylor's good for what he wants to do right now, what he has, but I don't think he's the guy that can lead you, consistently to the playoffs and even to a Super Bowl. So I think they've got some rebuilding to do, but I think Ron understands the fundamentals, and it's kind of what Matt Rule believes in too. You build to have a championship defense, and that's what they've been doing. If you look on that side of the ball, the Panthers have 6 or 7 first-round draft picks over there. That unit, now that they're starting to get healthy again with Stephon Gilmore back in there to replace J.C. Horn, they're starting to get really good again. So if he believes in a running game, Matt does, and so does Ron. So their basic foundation is the same thing: defense and run the ball, and be consistent that way. So if Ron can get that going in Washington, he can be successful. But again, what happened to them early in the year is kind of same thing with Carolina in a lot of ways. Carolina lost 3 games at home that they should have probably won. I mean, losing to the Eagles was almost embarrassing. Losing to the Giants was not good. Mm-hmm. So when you lose those type games, it puts you behind the 8 ball like they are now. So anyway, I think Ron can be a successful coach. He's been a successful coach. I don't see any reason why he would not do that at Washington.
2 more things, David. One, Marty Hurney. Do you think that he can, because he's in their front office, and I know Mark Mayhew has a GM title, but Marty Hurney has a big say, and he's got Ron's ear. Yeah,
that'll be interesting. I mean, I think Marty was big in some of the things they did around at Carolina as far as building. I mean, he's the guy that drafted a lot of the players here that was successful. How long he wants to do it, I guess, is a question mark. I mean, but I think Marty's relationship with Ron is what keeps them together and what makes that group work, because they've got a unique chemistry there and work well together. So could Marty do it with somebody else? I mean, Ron worked with somebody else probably, but he got with Dave Gettleman, and they were successful too for a while. But again, that's a long-term decision. I don't know how far long-term Marty wants to be in this business.
Last thing, why is this defense so good?
Wow. Well, it starts with up front. I mean, they've got some really good players. You got a first-round pick in the middle, and Brown. You got edge rushers like Hassan Reddick and Brian Burns on the other side. They're as fast as anybody in the league at getting to the quarterback. So they've got the foundation there. I think what they've got in the secondary starting to build, bringing in Stephon. I mean, J.C. Horn I thought was really a bigger loss early in the season, bigger than Christian McCaffrey, because of what he could do for that defense. And now they've got Stephon and kind of piecing things back together. Their safety now is, God, he was almost a rookie of the year last year, and he's playing at a high level. Doesn't get the attention he did last year, but that's another strong strength. So they've built around what they need to be around. I think Phil Snow, the defensive coordinator, is I won't use the word brilliant, but I love what he's done with this group. I mean, he doesn't get settled. I'm going to play a 3-4. I'm going to play a 4-3. He does whatever is necessary out there. He mixes, matches, and has combinations. I mean, last year when they played the Packers, and Aaron Rodgers after the game was like, because they really shut Aaron down in that game. They won the game, but Rodgers played one of his worst games of the year, and he said, "Yeah, they use some college thing, this 3-3-5 or whatever, 3-5-3, 3-5-3." And so I like what Phil Snow done. He's got the talent around him. They spent the draft picks to build around that. So that group, I think, is going to be good for quite a while now.
David, thanks a lot. Always love the insight. And I know you are a popular man on my podcast whenever you come on. So thanks a lot.
Well, I don't know why I'd be popular, but the only popular Newton in Carolina right now is Cam.
Well, there you go. Very good. It's that kind of humor. That's why you're popular. Thanks, David.
I call it snarky.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to David for joining me, and thank you, as always, for listening. I'll be back with another episode Thursday night, Friday morning. I'll talk to you next time.